Peter, let me start, and we are seeing Air Force One on the ground now with President Biden in Brussels. Talk about a little more the stakes for this summit.
Well, I think as Josh just said from Brussels, of course, this is the largest, most important stakes that this president has seen on the foreign policy front since taking office. No question about it. This is a challenge of a generation. Russia is seeking to redraw the lines of Europe through the use of force and devastating thousands of civilians along the way. So President Biden's challenge here, as Josh was talking about, was keeping the alliance unified, keeping them on the same page and presenting enough of a strong front, enough of a resolve to, force Putin to understand that this isn't going to go well for him. This is going to continue to go badly, and that the West is not going to abandon Ukraine, and that he's facing, a challenge that he's not likely to overcome, at least in the near term. And I think that may get into his decision calculus, but that's the question we don't know about. What is Putin thinking? What is his end game? What is he trying to get to?
Yeah, to the point of abandoning Ukraine, we hear from person after person, and we just played the sound from that Ukrainian journalist. They are grateful. They are thankful to the United States. They're grateful and thankful to NATO for the things that they have done. Having said that, they still don't think it's enough. They're still watching the carnage pile up. So let's talk about the job tomorrow for the other president, Volodymyr Zelensky. Obviously, as we said, an incredible messenger for his people. But, what can he say tomorrow that will lead to a change in NATO's response, escalate the response to what we're seeing on the ground there?
Well, I think, look, he has done an exceptional job of not only rallying his own people, but rallying the world by addressing the U.S. Congress, by addressing parliaments around the world, by keeping visible and bringing his message through video chats and so forth to the international audience. He has kept the pressure on the West in particular to respond in an aggressive way. And so what he will do, you presume, tomorrow is continue to push that. He may be pushing things that NATO is not willing to do. They're not going to do the no-fly zone because that is a shooting war with Russia. If you talk about a no-fly zone, what you're saying is you're committing to NATO airplanes, American airplanes, shooting down Russian airplanes. That's a step that President Biden is certainly not willing to take at this point. But the pressure that President Zelensky is going to put on them is going to make them be creative, make them feel that they need to find other ways to keep the pressure on Russia, to keep resupplying Ukraine, to find other ways to get Ukraine help, like these S-300 anti-aircraft batteries that are being shipped to Ukraine, things like that. So his pressure is important because it keeps the moral high ground on the Ukrainian side and forces NATO to look for ways to keep the pressure up on Russia.
Speaking of pressure, Colonel, there are very, very few people who would have predicted that a month into this, Ukraine would be holding the way it is. And NBC News reports that NATO is now estimating up to 40,000 Russian soldiers have been killed, captured, or injured in Ukraine. That's a staggering number. Put that in context for us.
Well, 40,000 is a staggering number. If we look at what we think was a number that crossed a month ago into Ukraine in the invasion, that's roughly 200,000. So when you start seeing military forces being attrited at a rate where they are upwards of 20 to 25% of them are casualties, what essentially you have is ineffective military units. Now, the Russians will be sending in reinforcements. There's no doubt about that. But again, these now are reinforcements that are coming in from Mother Russia that know they're going into combat, and morale, which was already bad, is going to be even worse.
As NATO and the United States look at what can be done to help Ukraine, you have to, of course, always look at that, Colonel, in the context of where we are on the ground. Tell us your sense of how the war is going and what you think we might see next.
Chris, great question. The bottom line is that the war, the initiative has shifted from the Russians with the invasion and the Ukrainians primarily being in the defense to where now the Ukrainians are going ahead and taking limited offensive action to regain lost ground and territory from the Russian forces. If the initiative continues to go with the Ukrainians, I think what we're going to see, and it's inevitable, is Russian forces will be in retreat. They simply are not going to be able to hold up against an increasing momentum from the Ukrainians. And so the possibility is, of course, this can go on for weeks, months, if not years, depending on how it all turns out. But I see a dramatic shift here to the Ukrainians, and they continue to marvel the world. To us military professionals, we stand in awe of what they've accomplished.
Well, Peter, let me get a little more granular because your newspaper has some reporting about the war for the skies over Ukraine, and I want to read just a little bit of it. Nearly a month into fighting, one of the biggest surprises of the war in Ukraine is Russia's failure to defeat the Ukrainian Air Force. Military analysts had expected Russian forces to quickly destroy or paralyze Ukraine's air defenses and military aircraft, yet neither has happened. Instead, Top Gun-style aerial dogfights, rare in modern warfare, are now raging above the country. The Ukrainians are hanging on. We're saying this again a month after the war started. I wonder how this fact has changed the Western response. And from folks you're talking to at the White House, are they prepared, as the colonel just said, for a conflict that could go on for weeks, months, even years?
Yeah, I think it has surprised a lot of Western analysts. You know, what you heard from American officials going into this war was that the Russians could be in Kyiv within 2 days, within just a handful of days, they could be in control of a lot of the country. That didn't turn out to be the case. I think that we overestimated, perhaps, and certainly Vladimir Putin overestimated the capacity of the Russian military. And, you know, the air war is a great example of that. Now, their doctrine is different than ours. Colonel Kearney probably knows more about that than I do, but their doctrine is different than ours. We wouldn't go into an invasion type situation without controlling the airspace first. That was the doctrine we saw in the Gulf War. We saw that in other subsequent wars. First, control the airspace. They didn't do that. The Russians didn't do that. They used their air power for close air action combat support for units on the ground. And that Ukrainians have been able to take advantage of that. They've taken advantage of the equipment that's been given to them over the years. And so one of the things I think I would add to what Colonel Kearney said is that not only are these casualty levels going to have an impact on the fighting ability, the functionality of these units, they're also going to have an impact on the home front. Because while Vladimir Putin certainly controls the media and he controls the information space in Russia, 40,000 wounded and injured and killed soldiers is a hard thing to hide when they come home, right? The body bags and coffins and ambulances and so forth that mothers and fathers are going to see for their sons coming home is not something that can be hidden. That's something that's going to ultimately have, you think anyway, an impact on the Russian people's view of this war against the people they consider to be their brotherly neighbors.
And Colonel, I'm going to go back to you about the dogfights. But Peter, since the president has just come off of Air Force One and he's getting ready to head into Brussels for, as we have said, those very high stakes meetings, talk about this moment in his presidency and the skills that he brings to it. I mean, for his approval ratings, which have been in the 40s, for the criticism at home about things like inflation. He is getting relatively high marks for the way that he is handling this. But more to the point, internationally is looked at very differently, that he has rebuilt an alliance that had basically gone away. Talk about him going into this as Joe Biden, as someone who has those months behind him.
Well, certainly this is a defining moment for Joe Biden's presidency, no question about it. And you can argue that his entire career has led up to this moment, right? He spent many years as a senator leading the Foreign Relations Committee. He spent 8 years as vice president, building relationships with people around the world, spent a lot of time in Ukraine. I traveled with him to Ukraine when he was vice president. So he knows this group of leaders he's about to meet well. He has a strong history of support for the alliance. And you're right, an alliance that felt frayed just a couple of years ago with an American president who was constantly berating the NATO allies and talking about even getting out of NATO in a second term, now feels more unified than it has been in many years. His mission statement seems clearer than it has been since the Cold War. And he's going into a room there, I think, where he is the indisputable leader of that alliance. And I think that they're taking their cues from him, but he's also taking his cues from them. He's trying to push them forward as well to take actions and to see how far they're willing to go on issues like energy, sanctions against Russia in terms of, how far they're willing to go in terms of arming Ukraine and in terms of helping them deal with the refugee crisis that's obviously going to overwhelm some of Ukraine's neighbors in these days and weeks to come.